Hey everybody, it's Tatiana with Back to Facts. I'm so excited to be bringing you an analysis with complete facts. I hope you're enjoying my videos. I wanted to remind you to subscribe, like, don't forget to share if you really like something, but definitely hit that red button and subscribe to my videos so you don't miss a thing. I have a theory about why Robert Mueller called William Barr, saying that he was concerned that the media were getting the wrong impression. It wasn't because he disagreed with Barr's letter. It was because he wanted the details that he had included about his work to be read by everyone all at once, because they explain the reasons why he found no conspiracy. And the reasons that I saw were that in spite of some high-profile incidents that came out in the media, he looked into them in detail. He did not see intent. He did not see any intent. He explained this in the report. With each instance. I already explained in my first video about the Hillary emails and how those emails had nothing to do with the ones that were supposedly hacked in 2016. They were actually from her private server, and most in conservative circles were very concerned about her 33,000 emails that she had not only deleted, but super deleted, according to Wired magazine. Right after a subpoena, she and her staff deleted those. So whenever I would hear this before the election, I thought, oh, you know, I'm sure they have to wipe like phones, right? I mean, they don't want it getting into the wrong hands, right? They have to destroy a phone with a hammer, right? Well, no, because I didn't realize that they'd already been subpoenaed, and that this was regarding going into all her activity as Secretary of State when she had a private server, not just private email, okay, a private server at a location. Now, I don't think Mueller really wasted his breath or made much effort to explain that these were different emails. Be that as it may, though, he did not find intent in Donald Trump's statement in jest, as saying, Russia, if you're listening, can you find the missing 33,000 emails? I think he could have done a better job of explaining that. Next, there was the Trump Tower meeting. So he looked into it, and he literally says in the report, nothing came of it. No information was exchanged. We did not see intent. This meeting was, it was covered up a little because I know it says in the Mueller report that Trump says, you know, just tell him it was about adoptions. And that's what everybody in the resistance is like, oh, adoption. It's a lie. How can he get away with the lie? I'll tell you. Russian adoption was ruled illegal by Vladimir Putin after we basically punished them. Hermitage Capital was supposedly blowing the lid off of some insurance scheme whereby Putin was getting rich and enriching all his friends. Sound familiar? And what happened was Sergei Magnitsky, he died in prison under suspicious circumstances. And under Obama, Congress passed the Magnitsky Act. And that was a very harsh decree saying we are not going to allow XYZ billionaires into our country, and we're not going to allow them to do business. We're freezing their assets. It was a big deal. And so Putin said, well, okay, if you're going to do that, then we are going to make it a crime to adopt a child from Russia. And so they shut that all down. The attorney supposedly connected to the Russian government who was going to bring in dirt on Hillary Clinton, she came in, as we all know, to the Trump Tower meeting, and she started talking about the Magnitsky Act and Russian adoptions and trying to lobby to change things, which is very strange to me because she was also working with Fusion GPS, which was a firm founded by Glenn Simpson, and they were actually being paid by the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign to do opposition research on Donald Trump. Now, we all know that's where the dossier came from. Unverified dossier that showed that Russia had compromised on Donald Trump. And this all came out right before the inauguration. And it was like, what? It really did cast a cloud over his inauguration and presidency. How convenient. But we know that it actually had reached the State Department mid-2016. We also know that its author, Christopher Steele, a former British intelligence agent, he had gone to the State Department urging them to release this dossier before the election, which sounds a lot like influencing the election itself. The Trump Tower meeting. I have friends who believe that, you get an email saying a foreign government has dirt on your opponent and you immediately call the FBI. And I always said, well, Emin Agalarov, who was like the singer that Don Jr. was friends with when they went over and did the Miss Universe pageant over there, Emin Agalarov is the one who offered it. Actually, his agent, Goldstone, was the one who offered the dirt. They said she was connected with the Russian government, but everything was pretty much not clear, and they were just going to see what they had, see who they were. And they did. They saw who she was and what they had. And guess what? She then, the next day, went to lunch with Glenn Simpson, who was producing this dossier on Donald Trump, which now everybody says is fake and phony. I believe the evidence shows that the Trump campaign did not conspire with Russia to influence the 2016 election. I also believe that obstruction of justice is not entirely clear, and I don't think that Robert Mueller exonerated Trump on the obstruction of justice charge. I think that the way that he worded it was really irresponsible. It almost reminded me of James Comey deciding to not charge Hillary Clinton for the private email server and the handling of classified material in July 2016, and then talking about the details, which you don't do. If you decide not to charge someone, apparently you don't hold a press conference and then talk about what they did. So this angered the right. Now, Robert Mueller, who's friends with Comey, also did something pretty unorthodox, as far as I can tell. He also listed a bunch of items showing possible obstruction of justice, and then saying he wasn't going to charge him. Now, he did invite Congress to look into it. A lot of people are saying that he didn't charge Trump for obstruction of justice because you can't indict a sitting president, including Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton's right out there just saying he obstructed justice, which is so interesting because she and her IT person actually destroyed evidence after a subpoena. So she's really treading on thin ice here, but when has she ever not? I mean, she's making statements that she can't really back up. It's like, when are we ever going to break through this tit for tat, this obstruction of the other side with no good faith at all? I believe the only way we're going to get through it if we actually find out more details. It is so unsatisfying to keep hearing that Trump went against his own intelligence agencies and said, well, President Putin says he didn't interfere in the election. This makes everyone's blood boil, of course, because it's like, how can you deny your own intelligence agency's assessment? Well, those of us who looked into it, we actually know that the ruling that Russia hacked into the DNC server was decided by an independent firm actually owned by Dmitry Alperovitch called CrowdStrike. They said it was a Russian hacker, but the FBI actually never got a hold of the DNC server. The Democratic National Committee would not give up their server. And James Comey himself said this was made it difficult for them to verify exactly who had hacked into the server and revealing these emails that were true. That's what influenced the election, when we had already had many emails released by WikiLeaks earlier in the year. There's a lot of rumor floating around, and it's been that way for a long time. The assessment by the CIA saying that Russia did do it, there were emails in which some in the FBI actually doubted the CIA's assessment because nobody had actually examined the server. A lot of us looking into this have seen all of this all along, and we're thinking, why the smoke and mirrors? Why the anonymous sources? Why the back and forth? Why can't we get to the bottom of it? And frankly, I think one of the most disappointing things about Robert Mueller's report was that he didn't do a new investigation into the server for the DNC that was hacked. He just repeated the evidence that was actually doubted by some in the FBI, confidentially, that it was definitely Russia. All that money, all that millions of dollars, and they didn't actually get any more evidence than what was already known out in the public. It just leaves me with a taste like sawdust in my mouth. But of course, it's like we have a right to believe our intelligence agencies. People started blaming Russia before the election happened. I mean, even in the summer of 2016. This was almost like a setup. Entrapment. Michael Flynn gets interviewed kind of in a casual way by this FBI agent. He does not completely represent the phone call with the Ambassador Kislyak. Now, Sally Yates takes this dossier, the information from the dossier saying that Russia may have compromise on Donald Trump, and says that Michael Flynn could be compromised and that he needs to go, basically. And then you have Congress saying, well, why didn't Trump dismiss him like earlier? But then after Robert Mueller investigates it, there's technically nothing wrong with what he did, talking to the ambassador about the transition and relations, Russian-American relations. So Michael Flynn gets fired for lying to the FBI and he gets charged. By the way, Michael Flynn has not been sentenced yet. Now to the obstruction allegation. So if you remember, James Comey testified before Congress. He said he wrote some memos up after he was with the president in the Oval Office. And he said that the president had said to him, Flynn's a good man. If you can maybe see your way to let this go. And then I think it's another occasion he said, this Russia thing is really a cloud over my head. Well, what would you do if right during the transition, the FBI director comes to Trump Tower, your seat of transition, and says to you, yeah, you know, there's this dossier. It's fake, it's unverified, it's
salacious.
And it's got an allegation that you had Russian hookers peeing on the bed in the presidential suite of the Ritz-Carlton in Moscow. Yeah. And Trump says, I want you to investigate it. Can you please investigate this further? I mean, this didn't happen and my wife is going to be really embarrassing. Of course, nobody has sympathy for him because grabbed him by the pussy, right? It's like, sure, it's not true. Well, I mean, you still need to have evidence. And so I have studied a lot of cases where when somebody gets on the bad side of the intelligence community or the U.S. government, all of a sudden, they're being investigated. And even if they are eventually cleared, they get taken down by process crimes, which are 1, lying to the FBI, 2, obstruction of justice. Process crimes, behaving incorrectly during the investigation. And now everybody says, well, what about Paul Manafort? That actually had nothing to do with the Robert Mueller investigation. It was something that Manafort had done earlier. So all of you who are saying, oh, everybody he knows has gone to jail. And then we have Carter Page, who has not been charged with anything. And he was the one that everybody was suspicious of because he had prior dealings in Russia. Then we have George Papadopoulos. This was supposed to be the smoking gun, right? And he was charged with lying to the FBI, and he served 13 days in jail. But now he's saying the whole thing felt really weird and phony about, you know, some guy who wasn't even Russian. His name is Joseph Mifsud. He was from Malta, and he was a professor at a university in Rome. And he was reaching out to Papadopoulos, mentioning these emails. Papadopoulos is like, okay. But when the FBI interviewed him, he was pretty freaked out, too. Now, Mueller looked into it and only charged him with a process crime, lying to the FBI, but nothing else underlying, no conspiracy. That seems like there's more information going to come out about the spying operation that did happen on Papadopoulos and Carter Page. So then you say, well, what about Felix Sater? Felix Sater was involved with the Russian mafia in New York. He was an emigre from Russia to Israel and then to New York, to Brighton Beach, and he made a fortune, name for himself in the Russian community. He actually became an FBI witness and then served some time, and then after that, he had a capital firm that helped Trump raise some capital. Now, Felix Sater has always said there was no collusion. He is not part of the Russian government. He's a Russian. So, I mean, if we're gonna really look at the evidence, we gotta listen to Robert Mueller. You know, it wasn't a cover-up. It was basically a lot of kind of minor affiliations over a very long period of time that everybody has been sort of smashing up together. Another one that everybody talks about is money laundering. Alpha Bank, that's a Russian bank. Deutsche Bank, well, the Deutsche Bank records are coming out. And also, by the way, Trump released hundreds of thousands of pages of documents and totally cooperated with the investigation. So they looked into everything. They found that Russians had been renting properties and Trump properties. But I gotta break something to you. Since the fall of the Soviet Union and the rise of the oligarchs, Russia and China, Russians and Chinese with money, have been coming over here buying property, kind of like the Japanese were doing in the 80s. You got to look at context. So that leaves Michael Cohen wanting to push through a Trump Tower Moscow during the 2016 election cycle. And then there was this issue with him lying about it in the beginning and saying that the project had been abandoned in February of 2016. And then it came out later that, oh no, he talked about it with Trump as late as July or maybe August 2016. Did Trump tell Cohen to lie? Remember that BuzzFeed report? And everybody was like, if true, dun dun, treason, treason, treason. And then Robert Mueller had to actually go, no, that's not true. It's been a real roller coaster, everybody. But all I can say is, I really hope the full truth comes out regarding everything. Because the spying's connected. The spying by the Justice Department and the FBI before Trump went into office, and I think even after, because the warrants were renewed. Yeah, that spying is a part of the whole story. And just the best thing that we can do is just keep calm and share complete facts like I'm doing with you today. I am giving the Trump campaign the benefit of the doubt. Yes, I am. And so are a lot of other Americans. And it would behoove everyone to really look into these details because while we're not in a constitutional crisis right now, if we don't get on the same page and be sharing the same complete facts, we will have a constitutional crisis. So thanks for listening, and don't forget to click the subscribe button. And I just want to thank you for everything that you do to support this channel because it keeps it going. Thanks a lot. See you soon.